Well, I think a lot of the works are about the kind of fear of not being a decent human, and how the people in the pictures are kind of hiding from a type of judgment from the other people. Especially in this exhibition, I have thought a lot about the chaos in society right now with the climate crisis and the really harsh political climate. And I myself think a lot about shame and how I feel ashamed that I'm not doing anything or not doing enough, and kind of never feeling like anything is sufficient. I listen a lot to relationship podcasts in my studio, and also in like forums where people can ask questions about moral conflicts and get answers from anonymous strangers on the internet. And I think it's interesting how people seek moral guidance from other people, and I tried to work with that in the works and to try and find a kind of social tension in the groups of people. I'm very inspired. I look a lot on early Renaissance art, actually. I'm really into the kind of stiff and awkward body language that the people often have. One of my favorite paintings is The Flagellation of Christ by Piero della Francesca, and it's a very it's a mural, but it almost looks like a collage, and all the people in the picture are stiff and kind of have their own story. They don't really interact with each other, and so that's something I'm really interested in trying to depict when I do my textile collages. It's I mean it very much reflects my own view of society. I think that it's I feel like the story is stronger when it's a little bit personal, even though that it's maybe uncomfortable for me to do it like that. And so yeah, I use my hands a lot in the works that are shown here, where I do different hand gestures, and yeah, sometimes I also use like snapshots of my friends where they don't know that I've taken a picture, and so their body language is kind of off. Well, I work with woodcuts, and everything starts with me getting plywood from a hardware store, and they come in a specific format from the factory. And then I carve motifs in them. I usually do like one person per board. And then I ink the board with a woodcut ink, and I print it on textile using it's called a baron. It's often used in Japanese woodcut techniques. After I print maybe 5 textiles, and after this the wood board is completely black. So then I have to paint it in a color and ink it with the black again so that the image can reappear. And after I have, like I make a lot of these so that I have something to work with, and then I do collages with everything parallel, both with the sewing the wood boards and gluing the pieces together, and also cutting the textiles and sewing them together to make an interesting image. And I also, with the woods, I've also poured on some epoxy resin on the boards so that they have this very glossy surface, and I've been working with different types of varnishes to kind of emphasize the tactility. Yeah, it's I feel I go back and forth with myself about that a lot, because it's not very comfortable to work in this scale. It's like sometimes I have really bad problems with my back because it's so heavy, everything. But it's for me it's a kind of distance as well. Like if I'm kind of carving a portrait of a person in a wood block, it could get like a very personal thing. But when it's so big, I can only see a landscape of lines, and I like that the work has different dimensions in that way, that you can go really close and not see anything, and then you can, if you see it at a distance, you can maybe see some figures. And I'm also interested in how, I want the works to take over the space, and that the viewer is kind of surprised, possibly, and feels a little bit small. Yeah, I did work a lot with painting when I was in preparational art school, and I always thought I would come back to it, so maybe this is a kind of way of coming back to it. I also, in these works, I've also worked a lot with the landscape, actually. Like, if you look at my earlier work, sometimes the backgrounds are just cut up bodies, basically. And now there's actually a landscape with like a sun and everything. And I thought that introducing colors could be an interesting way of making that clearer. In the work Piece of Paper, I was interested in the gesture of reading. So the motive is a woman that is holding a piece of paper in front of her face, but it's a little bit too close to her face for her to be reading on it. And it's also like a very unclear environment. It looks like a standard A4 sheet of paper in an office environment, perhaps, but it's not very specific. So I was interested in the kind of dissonance in the gesture, and how she's reading but not really. She's maybe hiding from something. And in the composition there is also this epoxy resin that is very shiny, that I've poured onto the surface, so it kind of looks organic and appealing, but also kind of strange and bodily in a way. And it's so shiny that the viewer can probably mirror themselves or see the room in it. And I also have cut a hole in the middle of the work that I made to look like a kind of crooked smile or something, where I have cast a piece of dry point into the work. So it's an eye looking out at the viewer. It's the eye of a horse. Another work in the show is Frozen, which is a textile collage. And here I tried to make a kind of group dynamic that is interesting. I guess the main focus is this female character that is crossing her fingers as if she's lying, or maybe that she's crossing her fingers for something to happen. And I've reused, when I've cut the textile, I've reused the silhouette so that it's like a negative space that kind of also indicates that there's a person there. And I worked with different scales. So I wanted to give the appearance that they are moving around in this kind of deserted type of Nordic landscape. And the colors are also quite cold.